Thank you, Brother Jimmy. Hey, if you would be turning in your Bibles to the book of Ruth, we'll be there in a little bit. Actually, not too long. I'm going to want to read some scripture there. Ruth chapter 2, if you would head that way. Our subject has been money, how to get it, and how to handle it. Most of us don't have any problem or as much problem with how to handle it as we do with how to get it. But that's what we're talking about, money and how to get it and how to handle it. We will be in this series for a little while and have been in it. I think this is our third week, and so far we've been talking about work. It's hard to get money without work. Some people have figured that out, but for the most part of us, we're not going to get it without working for it. So we've been talking about work and what work looks like and what the Bible has to say about work. I'm not going to review any from where we've been, but I want to pick up there on, and by the way, Kim corrected me last week. Our points here are letters. They're A, B, C, D, and she said every one of them I said number A and number B, and she said letters aren't numbers. And so we're going to start at letter H. That's where we're going to start. Maybe I can stay consistent at this and call letters letters and not numbers. We're at letter H, and what I want to start talking about this morning about work is, what does a good workplace look like? What does a good workplace look like? You know, I tell people that work for us that if you understand that you have to work for a living, that you haven't figured out how to get around that, and you understand that you have to work for a living, we want it to be the most pleasant place you could come to work at every morning. You hate to drive to work dreading your job every morning, dreading what you've got to do, who you got to be with, where you've got to be. And so you'd like for your workplace to be pleasant, since that the fact is that we all have to work. Well, what type of atmosphere should you promote, or what type of atmosphere should be promoted in a workplace? A lot of us are familiar with the book of Ruth. Hopefully most of you are. And there's a man in the book of Ruth by the name of Boaz that Ruth eventually married. And there's a little small section in the second chapter of Ruth that tells you what kind of man Boaz was. And I want you to read it with me. Ruth chapter 2, the first 4 verses. It says, "And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me go into the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap was to light on the part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered him, The Lord bless thee." Give you an idea of what is happening here. Ruth doesn't have a job per se, but in the Old Testament economy, when they would reap the fields and go out, I was at a cornfield this week, by the way, down in Victoria. I learned a little bit about corn. It's next to our place, and the corn is brown, and it looks like it's totally dead. But the ears, the guy was showing me, if the ears are still standing up, it's not quite ready, but when the ears drop down, it's ready to harvest. And so I'm becoming an expert on corn. I already knew how to eat it, but now I'm learning a little bit about it on the stalk. And he's talking about how to reap it. Well, say you're reaping that corn, and I'll bet a machine doesn't leave many ears of corn behind. But when you were reaping whatever it was, oftentimes there were little extras left behind. I remember going to a tomato field where they were getting tomatoes, and they let us go in after them in college and pick up what tomatoes they had dropped. Well, in the Old Testament, you glean like that, and whatever the reapers left behind, you could go get and pick up and use that to supply for yourself. Well, Ruth doesn't have an occupation right now, so she's gleaning in the field, and the field belongs to this man Boaz that happens to be connected with them. Verse 1 says that Boaz was a mighty man of wealth. He's not just a wealthy man, but he's really wealthy. And what's kind of interesting that I want to make the point here is the way that he greeted and converses with his workers in verse 4. Look what he says in verse 4. "And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered, The Lord bless thee." I wonder how usual a greeting like that was among a man of Boaz's status with his labor force. It seems to speak of the godliness that Boaz had with his workers. If a man's always bearing down on his workers real hard and talking coarsely and cursing his workers or whatever. You couldn't have a conversation like that. Boaz seems to be a really godly man, and he seems to be an amiable man. And he's going to his field. He shows up from Bethlehem, and he inquires about Ruth. He sees this lady gleaning in the field behind his men. And they told him Ruth's story. And when they told him her story, he commanded them to drop extra grain so that she wouldn't have to work as hard and would have plenty to take home. And so they began to leave a little bit more behind for Ruth to pick up. Well, I think that Boaz is a great example of a man with a good workplace. He's really wealthy, but he's real caring, and he's real kind to his workers. He stops to speak to them. He's blessing them in the name of the Lord. And it seems obvious that they respected him because they responded to him in the same way. What am I saying? I'm saying as Christians, we should foster the most pleasant and kind and respectful workplace that's possible, because you're Christian. You're Christian, and man, it does not stop with whatever goes on here today. It really starts tomorrow morning is when Christianity really starts. And as a Christian, we ought to foster that kind of workplace. In this type workplace, everybody's treated with respect and everybody's treated with kindness. Nobody's better than anybody else, even though everybody holds various levels of authority and responsibility in the company. Nobody's better than anybody else, and nobody's more important than anybody else. Now, with that said, this doesn't mean that less effort is given and that everything's just laid back and easy. I've seen Christian folks sometimes, and they would go to work for somebody who's another Christian. They go, oh, we're both Christians. This is going to be a real laid back, good job. That's not necessarily the meaning here or the intent here. But this type of environment that I'm talking about should foster the greatest of work ethics and efforts in the field. Although it's very amiable and very friendly, this group should produce more than anybody else because of the pleasantness and the harmony that's going on in the workplace. Well, like I said, Boaz learned about Ruth, and he found out that she lived alone with her widowed mother-in-law. And when he did, he took a special interest to see that his team provided a little extra for her. He cared about people. He told them to leave a little more behind, drop a little more behind them as they were reaping the harvest to help Ruth. I think that's kind of neat. He cared about people. Now, I'm saying that, and somebody might misconstrue this as saying that he should just give her food because he had more than she did, and that he should just provide for her with no effort on her part. But if you think that way, you might notice that he let her keep gleaning for herself. He just gave her a little advantage to her. We can get into that socialistic type atmosphere that you can have, where this one has this and this one has that, and you take from this one, you give to that one. Well, there may be a reason why this one has this and this one has that. You want to be careful. And I want to go there right now. We're going to talk about the sluggard. That would be a reason. And I want to talk, and by the way, this is not number I, this is letter I. We're going to letter I. Who is the sluggard, and what does he look like? Anybody remember Zig Ziglar? Remember who he was? He was a tremendous motivational speaker. Zig Ziglar was a member of Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Jack Graham's church. Zig Ziglar was the vice president of the Southern Baptist Convention under Charles Stanley. But he was a motivational speaker. His job wasn't a Christian job, although he interjected the Bible in a lot of his motivational speaking. Zig Ziglar once said this. He said, rich people have small TVs and big libraries. Poor people have small libraries and big TVs. Now, it's not just about big and poor, about rich and poor, but I want you to think about that a little bit. One person has a big library and a small TV, and one person has a large library, the other way around anyway. We're going to talk about the sluggard. The sluggard, what does he look like? Well, he is most always poor unless he inherits a good sum of money from somebody. But even if the sluggard inherits a good sum of money, he's usually not able to keep it, and he's not able to make it last. And I want to go through here. I'm on Numbers now. I'm on a number 1 now underneath the letter I. The sluggard is a great waster. Let me read you that proverb, chapter 18, verse 9. He says, he also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster. Webster defines a sluggard as this. He says a sluggard is a lazy, sluggish person. To be slothful means to be lazy. The same thing. Well, the verse here says that the sluggard is a great waster. The Hebrew word translated waster here is most of the time, and I mean almost always in the Bible, translated to destroy or to corrupt, to waste, to destroy or to corrupt. So the Bible is saying here that a man who is a lazy worker is a brother to a man that destroys and corrupts. To destroy something or corrupt something seems to assume that you started out with something of value, but you proceed to destroy it and you proceed to mess it up. You're a great waster is what he says here. The person being spoken of here, he's just slothful. He's just lazy in his work. He has a job or he has some kind of task that he's supposed to do. But instead of doing this well and producing a profitable result, he's lazy. And he wastes and destroys the opportunities. How many people have you seen that had opportunities that waste them that you just wished you had had? This sluggard does that. He wastes opportunities. What might our American economy look like? I want you to think about this. If business and industry didn't have so many thieves and so many lazy people, I wonder what our economy would look like. The government costs a lot less to do the tasks that the government pays to get done. You wouldn't have nearly as much theft, that type thing. Just imagine. You wouldn't need the police force that you need. You wouldn't need the legal people, the lawyers and judges that you need if you didn't have so many thieves and lazy people. Now, we're talking about lazy people in particular here. How many lazy people have you known that had good jobs? They had good jobs. They had several of them, but they wasted every one of them. They wasted every opportunity that came along. Often, a lazy man is really charismatic. He talks a really good line. This guy is a gifted speaker. He's charismatic. He talks a really good line. He's very persuasive. He knows a lot. He can sell himself, but he can't live up to his attractive sales pitch because he's too lazy. He's wasting opportunities that others might have loved to have. I remember my mom tells a story. Dad changed jobs a lot over the years I was growing up. He was in the trucking industry, and I heard Ken Owens count his one time during his testimony, so I counted mine, the number of places that I had lived or schools I'd been to by the time I got to high school. And I think I'd been to 13 different schools by the time I got to high school or whatever. We moved all over everywhere. I remember Mom saying one day that Dad had gotten a job with another company we were moving, and the man called the house to talk to Dad, and Dad wasn't there, and he was talking to Mom. She said, well, I need to get a hold of him. She said, we're looking for him to get here and deliver what he promised us. Dad was always good, charismatic. The only thing about Dad was Dad did deliver, so you could count on that. But to deliver what he had promised. The sluggard can't do that. He can't seem to deliver. Look at number 2. He doesn't have enough to meet his needs. Proverbs 19:15. Slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. A lazy man's generally a good sleeper. He generally has no problem going to sleep, and he generally has no problem staying asleep. A lazy man probably loves Saturdays, and he wishes he had more of them. Sunday school's probably not on his agenda, even if Sunday church is, because going to Sunday school causes you to get up early. After all, it starts at 10 a.m. You have to really get up early to get to Sunday school. I was thinking about this, and that has nothing to do with our Sunday school class. I'm just talking about in general. I was raised going to Sunday school when I was a kid. I wonder if we parents are ever responsible for raising sluggards. Now, I'm going to hit you with something here I want us to think about. Are us parents ever responsible for raising sluggards? Did Mom and Dad teach them to work early in their lives, or did they do everything for them? Did we clean up their messes, make their beds, cook all their meals, wash all their dishes, mow the family yard ourselves, take out all the trash, wash their clothes, fold their clothes, do all the spring cleaning, maybe even do their homework? Did you raise your children like that? Well, so they become teenagers now. Macy, you shouldn't be in here, babe. This is not for teenagers. Macy's my granddaughter. We're to teenagers now, okay? Okay, they become teenagers. Did you increase their allowance without requiring anything of them? Did you buy their car, pay their insurance, buy their gas, buy all their expensive clothes, and then give them spending money? Well, they go to college. Now they're in college, if they do go to college. Did we pay their tuition? Did we pay the room and board? Did we pay for the books? Did we pay for their car note, their insurance, their gas? Did we pay for their big spring break trip and their big Christmas trip every year? Did they ever work during the summer, or were they too tired from the tough school year to work in the summer? Something to think about. Are we raising sluggards? And most of us have raised our kids. Some of you are just now raising your kids. Some of us have grandkids. Are we responsible for our kids if they end up with that mindset? You say, well, Bob, that sounds harsh. I know it probably sounds harsh, but the Bible has nothing good to say about a lazy person, and society has very little to offer a lazy person. They just don't have anything to offer. A parent can really help his kids. A lot of times the reasons kids don't get this is because parents are lazy, okay? A parent can really help his kid if he's willing to put in the work himself and raise this child to be a diligent, hardworking, and resourceful individual. If we don't do this for our kids, they'll most likely suffer hunger and lack what they need as adults, and you're not always going to be around to help them out or bail them out. One of these days you're going to be gone, and somebody else is going to have to take care of them. You know, I remember when I was young I missed a few things because of work and all, but I don't have bad memories of that. And I appreciate my dad teaching me how to work. Dad taught us how to work. He paid us, always got paid. Now, I got paid when I was 12, I think 50 cents an hour and then $1 an hour, whatever it was worth. You're a kid, as you're coming in, it gets more and more. But Dad always paid us what it was worth. And I thank Dad that he did. I don't feel like I've ever been afraid of work. I know work's hard and it's not always fun, but he helped us to know that it was part of life, and that's what you do. Okay, look in number 3 there. He's too lazy to meet his own needs. The sluggard we're talking about. He's too lazy to meet his own needs. That verse says, the slothful hideth his hand in his bosom, it grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. I want to read you a paraphrase of that verse. One of the paraphrases says this: some people are too lazy to put food in their own mouths. I don't think I've ever seen a Beasley that way. Most of them weigh over 300 pounds. And I don't think that was one of the faults that went around in my family. But a lazy person, he says, too lazy to put food in their own mouths. John Phillips writes this. He said, the sluggard wants to be supported by someone else and to be indulged in every way. The sluggard does. I want to read you something else John Phillips wrote, and I thought this was good. He said, at the zoo, we've all seen lazy polar bears sitting up on their haunches, waiting for people to throw them tidbits. Too indolent to move, they just wave their gaping maws to and fro, hoping for a morsel to fall right in. In our national parks, rangers warn visitors against feeding animals. They explain that deer can become so used to handouts that they actually lose their ability to fend for themselves. Bears, the rangers say, can come to believe that handouts are their due and will become quarrelsome, even violent, if they do not get what they want. Smaller animals, such as chipmunks and squirrels, gravitate to places where people feed them, thus upsetting the proper balance of nature. So nature teaches us that giving too many handouts is not a good idea. A right-minded society does not make it easy for people to live on the dole. A healthy and compassionate society makes work available and refuses to support all but the sick, the incapacitated, and the hopelessly handicapped. The sick, the incapacitated, the hopelessly handicapped. The sluggard's too lazy to meet his own needs. That's too hard for him. Number 4, he always has an excuse or a reason not to work. I'll read you these 3 verses. The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore he shall beg in harvest and have nothing. The slothful man saith, there is a lion without. I shall be slain in the streets. Verse chapter 26, the slothful man saith again, there is a lion in the way. A lion is in the streets. It's seen that most lazy people are known to be such and are often confronted about it. That's what he's talking about here. They have a reason. Somebody confronts them and they have a reason why they're a sluggard. That's no problem that he's confronted. The sluggard always has an excuse, or always has it ready for his indolence and why he's lazy. It's either too cold or it's too hot. How many good days to work have been wasted because rain was forecasted and the sluggard stayed home even though the rain never came? Hey, I play golf with people in golf tournaments. You think rain keeps most guys from golfing? It's got to be a monsoon and 120% chance of rain for a guy to not play golf. I've been there when they show up and, man, they'll golf when it missed. They'll wait for it to stop and golf some more. But how many sluggers he watches the forecast and 30%'s tipping it on the heavy side of the scales, and he can't go to work. Now, often the excuses a sluggard gives are totally ridiculous. I think here in these couple of verses that Solomon's being sarcastic. What are the chances of a lion being in the streets? But that's what the sluggard's saying. He says, I can't go out there. There's liable to be a lion in the streets. I was thinking about this subject. Numbers of times I've mentioned to a panhandler on the street that they ought to go down to the Star of Hope mission, that they would feed them down there and give them a place to sleep. I said that to them, and usually they proceed to tell me some reason why going to the mission was not good. I remember Kim and I were on the sidewalk in Chicago a few years ago, and a guy wanted some money from me, and I said, hey man, why don't you go to the Pacific Garden Mission? It wasn't too far from where we were in downtown Chicago. I said, why don't you go to the Pacific Garden Mission? They'll feed you and they'll help you. He said that he couldn't go to the Pacific Garden Mission because they had bed bugs down there, and that wasn't a good place to go. Now, truth be known, he probably didn't want to have to listen to the gospel, or maybe he knew that they would be familiar with a situation like his, and they would only help him with his true needs. But irregardless, he didn't want to go. I walked off, and I wondered what kind of bugs were going to be under the bridge that he was going to sleep under tonight. Just lazy. Look at number 5. Number 5, he loves to sleep. We mentioned this a minute ago, but I want to read these 3 verses. He loves to sleep. Chapter 20, verse 13, love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thy eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't love your Posturepedic or your Tempur-Pedic or whatever you have. It just means don't love it so much that you can't get out of it, okay? Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Verse chapter 23, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Chapter 26, as the door turneth upon his hinges, so that the slothful upon his bed. Can you visualize that verse? As the door turns upon his hinges, so does the sluggard. You go in, he's sleeping this way. He's still asleep, now he's on this side. He's asleep later, now he's on this side. He can't get out. He's stuck in the bed and can't seem to make it. Well, God gives us gives us sleep to refresh us and to provide needed rest that our bodies have to have. I've heard some folks say that they can get by on 5 hours of sleep at night. Seems to me, as you talk to people, 6 or 7 is pretty common that folks need to sleep. Some need to sleep 8 hours. Now, somebody would call you a sluggard if you sleep 8 hours. I don't think that's right. If you need 8 hours sleep, get it and then get up. And let's roll and get on with the show. But that's all the sluggard needs too. But in his case, we're not talking about how much sleep he needs. That's not the subject. A lot of folks like to sleep in on their day off, and that's understandable. But the sluggard loves sleep. Consequently, he doesn't have enough food or enough clothes. He's too lazy to get out of bed and go to work. Just can't make himself do it. Let's take a minute. What about a spiritual sluggard? What about a spiritual sluggard? He's too lazy to get out of his bed in the morning and have a quiet time with God. But then he's got a problem at night too, because the TV stays on too late for him to stay awake and to seek the Lord at night. Sunday school starts too early. Remember, that's 10 a.m., and he's usually late to church if he does make church because he's a sluggard. When spiritual needs or any real needs come along in his life, he's so spiritually poor and he's so spiritually pitiful that he can't seem to find God any way in the world. He's starving spiritually and he finds no comfort. You say, well, Bob, that's my problem if I'm that way. It's your problem and it's other people's problem. Just like giving, I ought to have enough spiritually for me and enough to help somebody else if they need me. I was down in Victoria this week, and one of the guys came up to me and he said, man, Bob, he said, I'm going through a real hard time and I don't know what to do. I've had people say things like that to me, and I was so cold spiritually that I had nothing to offer them whatsoever, and I was ashamed inside my heart. And then I've had better times when I was walking with the Lord and I felt like God might have me give them something to encourage them. You need it for you. You need to have enough and more to give to somebody else. He loves to sleep. Number 6, keep moving so we can finish up. Number 6, he has desires, but he refuses to work to realize them. Proverbs 21:25, the desire of the sluggard killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. Charles Bridges says this. He says he thinks to live by wishing and not working. By wishing and not working. We say that we wish our ship would come in, but there's never one on the horizon. That would be nice, but most of us don't have our ship come in, as that seems to mean. This man has times when desires rise up in him to have something or to accomplish something, but the desire to be idle and to be lazy overcomes that desire. Nothing, not even the aspirations he may have, trump his main desire, and his main desire is to exert little or no effort. He just doesn't want to work. He just doesn't want to work, and it's hard on him. He's got desires, but they don't seem to ever take off or go anywhere. Look at number 7. He won't even skin his own deer. Proverbs 12:27. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. This guy is slothful. He rouses himself. Maybe he rouses. How he goes hunting, I don't know, because you got to get up early if you're deer hunting. But he rouses himself to go hunting. But he's often too lazy to even skin his own deer or to cook his own deer. How many of you have ever been hunting with other people that want you to skin their deer? I remember the first time I shot a hog. It was a javelina hog. And I was with a guy that we ran around with for a long time, and I was asking him how to skin it and what to do with this hog, and he started showing me, and he said, I'm trying to remember how the conversation went, but he said, no, you cut it. No, you stick your hand in there. You did this. You did that. I learned how to skin a hog that day. I didn't just watch one be skinned. I learned how to skin one because he made me do it. A sluggard can't do that. He wants somebody else to do it for him if he can get them to. And if not, he might even just leave it in the field. Or maybe he'd just cut the backstrap out of it and leave the rest for the scavenging animals because he's just too lazy to even skin his game that he's killed in hunting. If the hide is worth something, he's too lazy to take time to skin the animal, to sell the hide or use the hide. He just leaves it to rot in the field. He doesn't even roast what he took in hunting. In my mind, I liken this sluggard who finally comes up with enough energy and fortitude to find a job. This is this guy. He finally comes up with enough energy and fortitude to go find a job. He gets the job, a good opportunity for him, but he's too lazy to work at the job, and he's finally released in short order because he got the job, he got the deer, but he didn't even skin it. He didn't even work at it, and he got released in short order, and now he doesn't have a job. Rule number 8, the sluggard will be poor. He will be poor. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4. He becomes poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. This guy, he will be one of the two-thirds of panhandlers who is not so mentally unstable that he can't work. They say that 2/3 of the panhandlers are not totally mentally unstable that they can't work. They're out there for some other reason. 1/3 of them are mentally unstable, but 2/3 aren't. This man could work, but he won't. Consequently, he'll be poor. He'll look to his family to support him, or he'll look for the government to support him. Or more egregious, he'll look for God to support him. I resent that. Somebody's totally able, and they won't work, and they go, well, God's going to supply my needs. God has no reward for an indolent, lazy man. Now again, some people can do only this much, some can do only this much, some can do only this much, but for a person to turn no effort at all and say God's going to support him, God doesn't honor that kind of thing. This man wants somebody else to support him, or he wants the government to support him. And what he's doing, if he takes money from the government, if he can and should, money from the government and he could work, he's taking money that should be going to elderly people, to disabled people, to truly incapacitated people. This man's Social Security, they say, we keep hearing over the last years that it's going broke. It's going broke. Well, one of the reasons maybe it's going broke is that all the people that shouldn't be taking money from the government are taking it, and by the time this poor guy gets to 65 and he's paid all that money in, there's not money for him now because other people took it who shouldn't have. Hopefully you can appreciate what I mean. The person that gets retirement age, he can't work like he used to. He needs help. A disabled person, a truly disabled person, they need help. An incapacitated person, a truly incapacitated person, they need help. But this man's taking money that should go to them, and it's not right. He should be given to the Wounded Warrior Project itself. I've heard statistics that state that there will always be 5% of unemployment, a 5% unemployment rate, because 5% of people are unemployable. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but I wonder how much of that 5% are people that it's impossible to employ because they're too lazy. Possible to employ because they're too lazy. Some people are poor and they have a reason. Some are poor and they have no reason to be poor whatsoever. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're saying this 5% of the people is just unemployed. You just can't work them. You just can't get them to work. Look at number 9. Number 9. He will watch any possessions he somehow acquires deteriorate rather than preserve them. I want you one more time to turn to Proverbs 24. This may be the last time we'll read this, but you'll remember it. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 30. And read these verses with me. He'll watch any possession he somehow acquires deteriorate rather than to preserve them. He says this in Proverbs 24, verse 30. Again, he said, I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. He goes by this field of this man's house. Lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked well upon it, and I received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. So he's saying he went by this fellow's field. This fellow owns, possesses a field, a place, a house and all. But it's falling down around him. You know, I read that and I tend to believe that this man had to have inherited this place. He had to have inherited this house and this real estate. He certainly didn't build it, or he certainly didn't work for it, or he wouldn't watch it fall down around him. How many things, let me ask you that. You know what it takes to work and to get something done. How many things are you going to work to accomplish and then stand there and watch them fall down around you? Only way you're going to do that is for you to have just some kind of depression or some kind of discouragement that totally throws you out of the loop and messes you up. Otherwise, you built it, you're going to take care of it. You don't want to see it go to pot. He had to have inherited this because it's fallen down around him. Let me read you something that was published on businessweek.com. It's been about 10 years ago. They said this. They said about 40% of U.S. family-owned businesses turn into second-generation businesses. About 3% are passed down successfully to a third generation, and about 3% are passed down to a fourth generation beyond. So you're saying you have a family-owned business, the owner dies, the kids come around, about 40% of those make it. Now they die and the grandkids come around, only about 13% of those make it. And then past that, only about 3% of these family-owned businesses make it. Well, there's a lot of reasons that a family-owned business might not last to the next generation. I want you to think about it. There's a lot of reasons why a business might not go on to the second, third generation. First off, the family may sell it to somebody else. Or the next generation may not be interested in doing that line of work for a living. I know guys in business, and they got a son that's a doctor and a lawyer, that's a daughter that's a lawyer, or this and that, and the kids just aren't interested in the business. So a business may not go to the next generation for that reason. Or there may be no more market for what the business produces, and they may not need that product anymore, and it may go away for that. Or the next generation may not be talented enough or gifted enough to run the business. It just may not be a fit for their talents, and it may not last that to the next generation. But that's not the only reasons. That's not the only reasons. If the truth were known, I bet most would say that the second or third generation that the business was passed to were never taught, or they never arrived at a good work ethic. And they were either lazy or playboys who knew how to spend money, but they weren't industrious enough or disciplined enough to work at running a business. You say, Bob, that's just your opinion. You're right, but it's sure been based on a lot of things I've seen. A lot of things I've seen. People raise up their kids, and we were talking about in the home a while ago, they raise up their kids in a business and they give them everything in the world before they earn it. The kid doesn't earn it. He doesn't know where it comes from. He doesn't know the value of making a buck. or what that means. And when somebody's gone, he has no work ethic. He has no motivation. He has no discipline. He's not industrious enough. All he learned how to do was spend money. How does that work? Man, I never got that in my family. The only way you were going to learn to spend money is if you learned to make money. When I was a kid, y'all don't have to listen to this, but equate it to when you were a kid, okay? When I was a kid, I had 2 pairs of shoes. I had tennis shoes. They were Converse All-Stars, just like Macy wears. Converse, Chuck Taylor, All-Stars. You had a choice. Low top, high top, black or white. And you could have those. Then you had a pair of dress shoes, and they had a scuff toe on them. So if you scuffed the toe, it wouldn't scuff a hole right in the end of the shoe. You had about 3 or 4 pairs of pants and shirts and stuff like that. So we get older, we get in junior high, and you start needing to look cool. A person's got to look cool, at least by junior high. And you're going to junior high and you want to look cool. And you go to your mom and you say, hey, these Chuck Taylors aren't cutting it. I need something a little more cool than this. And you know what my mom would say? She said, well, what do those Chuck Taylors cost? I don't remember, but let's say, for example, $25. She says, well, what do you want cost? About $75. She said, no problem, here's $25. Where's the 50 going to come from? I got to come up with it, you know. Hello, work on Saturday or whatever, you know. But we don't always raise people like that, and sometimes sluggards come along. And it's kind of sad to see things go down when the kids when they learn to spend money, but they don't learn to make money and they don't know where it comes from. Like the field and the vineyard of the man in the proverb we just read, the business just wastes away. The business just wastes away. And what could have sold to somebody, the whole business could have sold to somebody for a good amount, is now auctioned off or liquidated because somebody was too lazy or too irresponsible to work. Folks, you won't believe, and I've got one more point and I'll be finished. We're running about on time. You won't believe the number of businesses I've seen in my life that when the motivated, working person that drove that thing died, if they would have sold it right then, they could have come up with some money for it and realized a gain for it, but that didn't happen. It passed down to the next guy. And by the time the next guy got finished with it, it was either sold in an auction or it was liquidated for 20 cents, 30 cents on the dollar, and they were barely able for what they got to pay the bills and come out even without owing money. And you think, why did that have to happen? Somebody worked real hard here. And in a lot of our cases, let me say this here and put the monkey on our back. In a lot of our cases, our parents worked hard for us. Let me tell you a crime. Let me tell you a real crime. We were not able to do this. Most of you probably weren't able to do it. But I know a lot of people whose parents, I talk to them nowadays, they worked like slaves to send their kids through college. They went through college. Then they had college debt, a lot of them. They paid that off. About the time they paid that off, their kids went to college. And they paid their kids college debt. And they went to some Tier 1, Division 1 school. And then if they went to Baylor or somewhere, they really paid for it or whatever. And they paid for this kid's school. So this parent, he went to school. Maybe they didn't pay for his, so he had college debt. I'm thinking of a person right now this happened. They paid their college debt. Now their kids are going on to school, and they're helping them through college. If that kid doesn't take advantage of that, shame on his soul. And if it's our fault because we didn't teach him to work, shame on our soul to put that kind of investment in somebody. I'm saying I'd say a lot of our parents put a big investment in us. I'm not just talking about college money here. I'm talking about a lot of things. A lot of our parents put a big investment in us. They spent time with us. They taught us. They raised us how to work. They raised us how to take care of ourselves. They set the example to take care of yourself and help other people too. And if we don't do that, shame on our soul if we don't do that. God needs us to do that. People need us. The world needs us. They don't need a drain on society. They need somebody that won't drain society, that'll actually give something back, is what they need. And if we don't follow through with that and use the talents God's given us, that's too bad. Let's look at the last thing. He thinks he's wise. Now this sluggard's not stupid. He's not stupid. He thinks he's wise. Proverbs 26:16. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. I want to read you what John Phillips says here just before we go. He said, the sluggard is the original know-it-all. He's far too lazy to study, but he thinks he knows more than those who do. Other men spend their lifetime studying. painstakingly forming opinions and coming to conclusions on a subject. Right or wrong, they can at least back up their opinions by appealing to the sources they've studied and the work they've done in the field. But the sluggard considers his own half-baked ideas to be just as good or even better than others. The sluggard's got he calls him the original know-it-all. This sluggard knows everything. He can talk to you on every subject. But he doesn't have a big library. He's got a big TV. But he doesn't have a big library. Where did he get his knowledge at? He didn't get it in school. He didn't get it in books. He certainly didn't get it in learning. He just got an opinion. And everybody's got opinion. We all respect everybody's opinion. We all respect everybody, but I don't know about respecting their opinion. I'm not sure about that. I hadn't thought that out. But he's got an opinion. He's wiser than everybody else. He may be a thinking man, but his thinking's warped. His thinking's warped. He has his opinions, but they have little reason to back them up because he has no good experience. He hasn't worked and had any really good experience. He has no education to back his opinions up because he's too lazy to study and he's too lazy to learn. He's formed his opinions based on a lazy disposition and from a lazy man's point of view. You can argue with him if you want to, but don't think for a minute that he's not ready with a reason for his laziness and his sloth. You ever argue with a lazy man? My mom, I remember she used to. She used to wake me and David up and argue with us in the mornings when we were kids. All the time. We had a reason, why this. Oh, Mama, didn't feel good last night. David kept me awake last night. He was pulling the covers last night and it got cold and I couldn't sleep. The window was open and it got cold and I couldn't shut it because it was stuck. E.B. was listening to the TV in the other room and the TV kept me awake. Dad came in late and when he opened the door I never could go back to sleep. Mom, I just need to sleep some more. You may need to sleep some more. I don't know. But the sluggard's wiser than 7 men that can give a reason. He always wants to give a reason. Always has a reason. Now you say, are you talking to us this morning? I'm talking to us. Hopefully I'm not talking about us. Hopefully we're not that. But we don't want to be that. And most of all, we don't want to contribute to anybody else being that way. We don't want to do that. He's a person in the Bible that needs to be considered. And as you're walking through this world and you see these things come up, you need to understand some kind of people and their way of thinking to understand how you should react and how much you should contribute to. I have a saying. I'm going to say this and we're going to pray and I'm going to go. I don't know. I told Mike and them I'm not sure whether this is totally right or wrong. I'm not sure if it's kind of the way I feel. When you're talking about dealing with people, in my mind I say, you care, I care. You don't care, I don't care. You come along and you care and you're trying to do something with your life and trying to help yourself and trying to help other people and trying to move along, I'm in. I am in. I am in. I want to be your partner. Anything I can do to help you, I want to help you. But you come along and you don't give a flip and you don't want to give a good effort and you don't care if you learn or you don't care if you don't learn and you couldn't give a flip, well then I don't give a flip. I'll spend the time somewhere else on somebody that really cares and somebody who really has some kind of desire to do something for themselves and for somebody else. Just some things to think about. Father, thank you for the Word of God. Lord, we're talking about this subject, and it's all through the book of Proverbs, Lord. You put that book in the Bible and wrote everything that's in it, Father. Lord, I pray you'd help us to be wise. Help us to never to be found to be a sluggard, Lord, not a spiritual sluggard, or any kind of sluggard, Father. But help us to motivate us. Give us heart to work, Father. If there's anybody here this morning that's lost heart or that's been set back or had struggles, Father, I pray you'd give them new heart, Father, and you'd strengthen them and stir their heart and their energies and bless them and give them your grace, Father. And I pray you'd help us to be good examples, Lord. I pray that we would do our best not to be burdens on other folks and hopefully maybe be able to help others along in some way or another. We love you, Lord. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.